Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stitching Tales. I am Johanna Lundström, the author of several sewing books, including Sewing Activewear and Master the Cover Stitch Machine. I also have my own sewing pattern line, and I have also a YouTube channel where I teach lots of sewing tips.
My name is Malena Hjerpe, and I work as a freelance pattern maker, and I also create my own PDF pattern under the name Hazelhen Patterns.
And today's episode is actually a continuation of episode number 43, I think.
Yeah, 43.
Yeah, that's correct, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Where we talked about the challenges of hemming stretchy fabrics, especially knits, which is definitely something that can cause a little bit of a headache when you're sewing. And that was kind of a consensus when we talked about it. And in the previous episode, which we highly recommend that you go back and listen to if you haven't already, we talk a lot about how to hem if you only have a regular sewing machine. And we barely touched on the other two options that you have, which is your serger and your cover stitch machine. So before we're going to take this to the next step now, if we have figured out how to do it best with the sewing machine, because the good news is that one might not think of the serger as a tool for hemming knits, right, Malena? That's not the first thought that comes to mind, I think.
No, exactly. You sew all the other seams with the serger for knitwear, but yeah, you can actually do the hems as well on a knitted top. It could be quite useful, actually.
Yeah, I agree. So what would you say are some ways that you can use serger when you're hemming knits?
Well, my favorite go-to seam is, well, basically just the regular, overlocker serger seam. I don't do any different settings or anything. I just fold the bottom hem seam allowance, like for the bottom hem, into an N fold, we call it. I think this one has different names as well. So basically you fold the hem up and then fold it one more time, so the fabric becomes like an N, or Sida, whatever you want to yeah. And then you serge the edge, so you basically sew through 3 layers. You can cut away a little bit of the edge, but you don't have to, actually. And this way you don't even get, when you have sewn the hem, you press the seam allowance, like the overlock seam allowance upwards, and then you will have it basically will look like you have sewn on a smaller cuff after this. And this way is really good because you use then an overlock seam, which is really stretchy and durable, so the risk of the seam to be cracking or anything when it gets stretched out is very minimum. I do recommend don't do a too small hem, like use maybe a little bit wider, like minimum 1 inch, like 2-3 centimeters hem. Otherwise it might be that it start to flip over, like start to stand out. But a good pressing, and you can actually also like add the top stitching, so you stitch down the seam allowance so it's pointing up all the time. So you could do that as well, maybe with the fabulous stretchy thread we have.
Yeah, that we talked about in the last episode. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a really good idea. Do you have any images or something like that we could share on our Instagram account, Stitching Tales pod?
I will. I will search. I definitely have it. Or if I think I have made an illustration for it in my Malva tea that you can get for free if you subscribe to my newsletters. There, if I remember correctly now, I have an image like how to do the N-fold. This is also my lazy go-to hem when I don't want to re-thread my cover lock, or if it's like a really soft fabric. This is like almost a bulletproof like hem. You can't really go wrong with it.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's very underutilized, I think, and it adds a little bit of a decorative finish as well. It doesn't it doesn't bring down the look. I think it adds some interesting. As you say, the struggle, regardless of your machine, is that you need like a lot of stretch, and the fact that you're using overlock or Serger overlock stitch means you have so much thread in the loop. So this seams is very stretchy, so if you stretch it out, it will not pop because all this thread that is interlocking basically. So it's a very good way of doing it, and I think that's one of those things that we don't really talk enough about or show. And I have a version of that I have in my book Sewing Activewear, that I'm going to hold up some photos of it, which is that you use on a serger. You also have the flat lock seam, and you could use the flat lock seam, which the benefit of using a flat lock seam when you're sewing seams is that it folds the fabric flat, so you don't get any bulky seams. So it's great for underwear and activewear. Now the domestic serger flat lock isn't super durable compared to what you would get when you buy ready to wear, so it does have some limitation, but it's actually a wonderful way of doing hemming using a similar folding technique that you described, Malena. So I'm going to hold it up now for those who's watching the video version, which I highly recommend. So, but we're going to post photos of that also on our Stitching Tales Instagram account. So you do the similar fold, but as you described, Malena, but you disengage the knives, and then you stitch over that fold, and then you fold it up. So as you can see on the outside, if you're watching the video version, it looks just like these nice flat lock hem that you will find when you buy activewear, and on the inside it's the ladders, and you can also put these on the outside. And I've done this on many tops, and it looks super pro. And the only trick is to fold very evenly, because if it starts to get uneven, that's the benefit of your method, is the fact that it cuts away the edge, so it doesn't have to be as even. My method doesn't cut away the edge, so you have to be really precise, because otherwise it will be a little bit uneven. But I highly recommend this method. And of course we are doing an audio version here, and if you're not watching the videos, you cannot see it. But we will definitely make sure that both these things that we are talking about now, we will definitely show you on our Stitching Tales Instagram account.
But can you do this on any serger, or is it?
Yeah, any serger. I would want to say that I think all sergers have this, all modern sergers have this flat lock.
Do you have different settings, or is it just removing the knife?
There is usually a type of lever on the serger that you have to basically at one of those, I don't remember the English word, gripare, the thing that pulls the thread upwards. There's a way of disengaging one certain function, and from my understanding, I would say that you don't need any special serger. At least the ones I've owned, from cheap to expensive, has had this flat lock seam, which is also a variation of this seam. The flat lock seam is also what you can use when you're doing the blind hem stitch, as we mentioned a little bit in the last episode. You can also do a blind hem stitch on a serger, where you basically get the ladders on the outside. When we talk about ladders, you might wonder what it's. Short vertical stitches, about 4 or 5 millimeters long, evenly spaced out, of course, on the right side. And if you use a thread that matches the fabric, again, this will not be visible. And if you go into a vintage shop and check out maybe t-shirts from the 70s and maybe 80s, you will find that this is a quite common technique to actually hem. So this is a very proven technique, again, that I think is very underutilized, because it has so much stretch. It adds a nice decorative feature. So why not? And you can also use contrasting threading, like getting white stitches if you like that look. So I think the serger is, I think we don't do a good enough job on educating, I think, on how to use a serger. Because already now we talked about 3 different ways of hemming. And maybe, I'm sure a lot of listeners, even if you have a serger and use it a lot, it would be interesting to hear from you if you ever tried these techniques that we are talking about, or that you, or were even aware of it, because even sometimes in the when you get the manual for the serger, the one that you described, for instance, Malena, it is not shown in my manual. For instance, the only one that they show in my book is the blind hem stitch, not the other ones.
Yeah, and I have actually sewn the ladder stitch that you are talking about. I was just wondering if it was the exactly same. And yeah, it's the one that remove the knife and then do some different kind of settings with one of the threads. I mean, this was very clear in my manual how to do it. And then yeah, it was super easy and like a little bit satisfying when you pull apart then the hem, so it like opens up and you can actually see those ladder stitches. So yeah, you can do it. It was very easy. I'm a little bit like hesitant whenever adjusting anything on my serger because it's working fine. I don't want to mess with it, but if I did it and it was successful, yes, then I can say that. I can give my stamp of approval for it. Like, yeah, it was an easy thing to adjust. So yeah, definitely check that out. And I've seen this. I mean, this is, as you say, very common also like in the fashion industry. It gives a little bit more maybe a casual look to it, which I mean is really nice on some certain designs. So definitely play around with it. And I've seen people using like different type of also contrasting threads to give a nice look, and rainbow color threads and everything. So you can really get a nice design feature with this one as well.
Yeah, I agree with it. It's so nice sometimes because at least for me, I mean, I do have a share amount of thread, and if you watch the video version, you can actually see some of it. I have lots of colors and lots of spools in each color, but still sometimes I'm usually, when I'm in the situation of I have a cover stitch machine, and I usually don't have enough thread to not having to remove the thread from the serger and thread my cover stitch machine. And depending on what you're doing, sometimes, usually you can do hemming the last, but sometimes you have to go back to the serger and do something else. So you end up rethreading, and I think we all can agree that rethreading is probably the thing we are very keen on avoiding as much as we possibly can. So that's why it's actually pretty nice if you usually only have to rethread one of the looper threads basically to be able to switch to these stitches that we're mentioning. So you will effectively save a ton of time, and also perhaps you don't even have to buy a cover stitch machine, because what we are mentioning here, if you combine the techniques that we talked about in the previous episode on sewing machine stitches, I mean, you can go a long way with just using your serger and your sewing machine.
Yeah, definitely. Have you had any experience with because there are also machines that are like a combination, both a cover lock and an overlocker? Have you ever tried?
Yeah, the first one I bought. I think was in 2004, I think, and back then, I would say in Sweden 100%, and I think generally as well, it was pretty much impossible to get a domestic standalone cover stitch machine. So every machine that has a cover stitch function was a combination machine, and I wouldn't say I had a great experience with that machine. I think a lot of that has been confirmed to a lot of people that I talk to, that at least sometimes those combination machines end up doing a decent job but not great job at both things, so they don't really excel in any areas. Whereas if you have a standalone machine, that said, the Baby Lock is very expensive. My Serger is from Baby Lock, for instance. They have combination machines that are much more easier to rethread and are, from my understanding and the ones I've tried, are very, very good at doing this combination job. So I wouldn't say don't get a combination machine. Also, it's both a budget and a space thing, but definitely do your research and don't be tempted by buying an inexpensive, because I would say you will likely end up switching eventually. That's my experience.
I mean, there is two-in-one products usually mean that you have made compromises on both ends, so they are usually not the greatest. I mean, there are reasons why there are two different machines for it. So yeah, but yeah, as you said, depends on your budget and space, of course.
We should perhaps talk about what brands of Sergers or overlock machines that we have. So what's your brand, Malena?
I have for my overlocker or Serger is it's a Bernina, but I think the overlocker then is called Burnett, I think.
Yeah, right. They have some. I don't understand the naming. How that works.
Me neither. But I mean, it's still like under the Bernina umbrella. My home sewing machine is also Bernina. I swear by Berninas. I love them. My cover stitch is a Singer. Since I don't sew that much and I don't sew for a living, it was a little bit of a budget thing. Like the Bernina cover lock was more expensive, so I bought the Singer one that was a little bit cheaper. Still expensive, but yeah, cheaper. I do regret it a little bit going to Singer. I tried the Bernina's cover lock on a crafts fair, and I think that one is, I'm kind of having a little bit of remorse by now that I would have it would have been better to stick to the Bernina. The Singer, I mean, it's a good machine, but I have a problem with when you sew with a, how do you say, gas pedal, basically. It doesn't have a nice flow. Like you push the gas pedal and push it, nothing happens, and then all of a sudden the machine is rushing. The Bernina had a little bit more like if you just press a little on the gas pedal, it just goes a little. So it had like different levels, like you can smoothly accelerate and then smoothly stop, while the Singer is more like on or off, like 100% or nothing. And it was, and I tried to like see, was there anything wrong with my pedal foot or anything. Do you say pedal foot? No, what do you say? Gas pedal?
Gas pedal.
Yeah. Well, the thing you push your foot on.
The pedal,
yeah. So I'm not 100% happy because of that. Besides that, it is like sewing fine. The seams are nice. I haven't had barely anything problem with the skipped stitches or anything like that. It's just how the machine is for me, how it is sewing. I'm not really happy with, but the seams are fine and it can sew through quite thick layers as well. So I mean, it's not that I don't recommend it. It's just that I'm a little bit. I usually go. I want to have a tight budget when I buy things, but here maybe I was a little bit stupid with my budget. It would have been nicer with Bernina, but it's fine. What are your brands that you stick to?
So I have my Serger. As I mentioned it previously, I first bought a Pfaff combination machine, which was a cover stitch and a overlock machine, and I think I kind of managed with that for about 10 plus years, I think. Wasn't too happy, but it was fine. And then I switched to standalone machines. And I decided to invest in a really good Serger, which is the Baby Lock Ovation, and it has a sticker shock pricing. It's incredibly expensive. I don't remember what I paid for it, but I think it was around like around €1,000, around $1,000 for reference. So around 10,000, 11,000 Swedish crowns. That was extremely expensive, and it's a wonderful machine in terms of how reliable it is. It's fast. It never has any wonky stitching or anything like that. And the only thing that I am not super happy about is the fact that it's auto tension. So you cannot adjust the tension on this machine. So for instance, if you're doing like a flat lock seam, sometimes it's good to adjust the tension of the looper or the needle to make the seam lie flat when you pull the fabric apart. And because there's just a little bit of a screw that you can do tiny switching, but it's very blunt. It isn't very precise. So that said, it does do the auto tension job great when you're just doing regular overlocking. But I find myself missing that sometimes. And also, I kind of think, but maybe that's only because I only owned 2 sergers, whereas one was the combination machine. I feel kind of that it doesn't do a great job sewing over thick layers sometimes. I wish the presser foot would go up a little bit higher. It's hard to explain. I feel maybe a little bit, a little bit like that. But overall, incredibly reliable machine. I think I've had it now for, it must be like 8 or 9 years or something like that. And I've been super happy with it. I have no issues whatsoever. Never had anything broken. I've changed knives once, but that's about it. And my cover stitch machine is about as old, I think, as almost 10 years as well. And my cover stitch machine is the Janome Cover Pro 2000, which is a 3-thread cover stitch machine with 3 needles, which is the common, I think, these days. But before, you usually only had 2 needles that you could either do a narrow cover stitch or a wide. But the 3 needle allows to get it very decorative on the back side, which you can also use on the front, which we will talk about when we get into cover stitch machine. My gripe with the Janome Cover Pro is that it is a little bit fickle, and skip stitches is a common occurrence on this brand. So I know how to work myself around that, but I do feel that you have to do a lot of prep work on the Janome that I don't think you should have to do. And if you are having problems, I both highly recommend my course Cover Stitch Success, which I show how to fix those issues. And if you have a cover stitch machine, you will definitely find this really helpful. And also my book, Master the Cover Stitch Machine. And I am definitely now, once I have more free time and space, when I finish my jeans course, I would invest in the Janome Cover Pro 3000, because that has that 5th thread that you can do the top cover, which you get like a professional hemming with the 5th thread, like you see in activewear and things like that. So that, and apparently they have managed to, according to those who bought it, they have managed to fix some of these issues that has been a common occurrence with this particular brand.
Is that still home, using air quotes now, home sewing machine, or is it like an industrial
it's sewing machine? Yeah, exactly. It's still
Do you
a home
know the price
machine.
difference between proper industrial machines?
No, I don't really. I kind of thought about it, but when I did research for my book Master the Cover Stitch Machine, I visited a factory here in Borås, which is part of the university, the Texas University, and I talked to the seamstress there, who are teachers, and they said that the industrial cover stitch machines are also quite prone with issues, and it's very good to have a handy technicians close by. It's a good machine when it works, but yeah, it needs very proper setting up things. So I tried a few, and one was absolutely amazing, but also it was optimized for that particular fabric and that particular thread. So to me, I thought that if I have to do a lot of wizardry every time I need to switch fabric and thread and needles, which I have to do all the time because I never do the same garment twice in a row, I figured to me it's not worth it. But I know that some people use industrial cover stitch machines, but I definitely think you have to have an interest in servicing your machine and understanding all the nuts and bolts behind it.
Yeah, totally agree there. Home sewing machines are usually a little bit more sturdy. They can handle everything quite well. But industrial machines, you have to adjust settings yourself then to your specific fabric and threads and everything. So it requires a little bit more knowledge as well from you then. You have to be a mechanic all of a sudden as well.
Yeah.
To be able to master them, but yeah, when they work, they work really well.
Yeah, they do exactly. But I guess you have to have some understanding of your behavior, because we mentioned previously that like, even rethreading can be a bit of a hassle. I mean, imagine then having to do all the other stuff if you can't. At least I have struggled rethreading a machine. I can't really see myself. That's the kind of like insight in your behavior, like understanding your personality.
Yeah, absolutely. When you rethread, how do you do it? Do you like rethread it like from scratch, so to say, or do you tie the threads to the new threads and then just pull it through the machine?
With the looper, I use the tie thing. Sometimes I feel it can be a little bit difficult when you're using the needle threads. I don't know I should, because I talk about this in my book, I think. But there's this knot, and maybe you know the word of it in English. A traditional knot that's used in like scouts and things like that. When you do that, it will not pull apart, and it's also a very tiny knot. So that means you can pull it through a regular size needle eye. So you can do it, and they showed me when I visited the factory. That's what they do. They never start from scratch, and I think I really appreciate this. So sometimes I do that, and sometimes I forget how to do the knot. And then I'm like doing a regular knot, and that won't work because it's too bulky and might unravel. So how do you do it, Malena, when you're rethreading?
No, I just do a regular knot and pull it through. But yeah, I've noticed it doesn't go through the needle. And also when you pull, even if you have lifted up your pressure foot, so the tension is more loose and easier to pull through. I mean, the needle still bends when you like pulling the thread. I'm now a little bit scared that it will, shift a little bit then. And then it will be a lot of issues and you have to have a new needle basically. So I always, pull the thread through with that knot, but I don't pull it through the needle. So when I come to that stage, I clip off the knot and the just thread through the needle, which, then it's fine. It's still quite easy. And I always use those, what do you say, teasers? No? Yeah?
Yeah, tweezers.
Yeah, tweezers.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's like really difficult to get through the needles.
It is really difficult,
But especially, I never do it from like scratch. It's that's just time consuming and risk that the thread won't be placed properly when you do that. Yeah,
because it's usually quite a semi-intricate way. There's usually a few steps that you have to thread holders that you have to go through, so it's so nice to not having to do all that stuff again, regardless if you have a Serger or a cover stitch machine. I agree with you. I do the same thing as you. I don't start from scratch either with a needle, but and
whenever I have done it, I don't start sewing immediately. I always turn the handle, like the hand wheel, a couple of times just to so I see that it's working properly. Because I've done that a couple of times, that you start and the threads has not been pulled out properly, or it hasn't been long enough, so they untangle basically, and you have to re-thread it again and try to see which of all the steps is not correctly done.
Yeah, it's usually, I sometimes find they make it a little bit unnecessarily complicated. It depends on the machine as well. You brought up a good point, that it's a good reminder, if you don't know this, that you should always lift the presser foot when you're rethreading, because you need to release the tension disc, because you will, if you do the pull method that you and I are doing, Malena, you will have struggles pulling it through, and if you do the threading, it might not get properly inserted in the tension disc, which will mess up the tension. So, and regardless, I think it's also a good idea just to double check if you do rethreading. I sometimes like to pull the thread and floss it a little bit between the tension discs, just to make sure that it sits firmly in the slot, because it's very easy that it jumps out a little bit.
Yeah, so every time on all the threads, I would say. That's I always do that as well. It seems like we have had the same issues.
Yes, and I'm sure any one of you listened, this will happen. And again, this is not intuitive, and sometimes we don't read the instructions like every word and take it to heart, because we're so eager to just get started to sew, and we figure out how hard can it be. but yeah, tension, that is a common problem with any type of sewing machine. I think we all run into it, and it's usually a pretty easy fix. It's usually related to something wrong with the threading, I would say.
And then
something is jumped out somewhere.
You don't have to re-thread it even. Just like try to pull, as you said, flossing like the thread
through the teeth, right?
Yeah. That we usually then it comes into the right place. So yeah, that's I would say the most common issue. And then you start to re-thread it because you didn't realize what it was, but it was just that it needed to be pulled a little bit, basically.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point.
And one thing I can remember, you said a little bit with sewing through thick layers. That's a good thing to do also on both overlocker and cover stitch. When there are thicker layers, I always on both machine lift up just with my fingertips, just lift up the presser foot a little bit, so it's easier to like there's no hump for the presser foot to sew over, basically. So I always stop, pull it up a little bit, and then like help out the fabric to be pushed through. So that I find is a lot helpful. And just sewing over like the overlock seams when you sew with a cover stitch, this little tip is very helpful for me.
That's a great tip, because I'm good about leveling the presser foot when I'm using my sewing machine and my cover stitch machine, but I kind of missed this idea that you say, that because I've been frustrated because there will be issues, especially if you're serging over where you already have done seams and you're at this bulky intersection where several seams joins, and I find that I have, it has some feeding issues, and the stitch lengths obviously get shorter then because it doesn't feed properly.
Yeah, and the knitted fabric stretches out then, and
it's so frustrating. Yeah, because otherwise it's so reliable. But such a good tip. Thank you, Malena, for sharing this, and hopefully this is a revelation for other people as well, not just me.
Yeah, and I think if you are a beginner sewer, it's like you think that you are supposed to be able to sew one seam like from start to beginning without stopping, and that's like the proper way. And it's like no, not especially on these types of machine either. Like you have to slow down, you have to stop, you have to do these kind of small things, otherwise it is going to be really tricky to get a nice seam. So don't you can stop, it's allowed, it's okay.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Very good idea. I should also just do another plug function for the baby lock, and it has two things that are nice to have. It has air threading, so when the looper you can just pull it and it will go through I can't remember the English word now, the mechanics that you use for sewing the looper thread in the bottom of the machine. Anyways, that's so nice. But the other thing that I love about the baby lock is that it has a tool for threading. So you just place the thread horizontal to the needle line, and then you just push a little thing, and then it pulls the thread. So it's like an inbuilt needle threader. So, and then you just switch it to the right needle, and you just pull that, and it does the same thing. And that works like 9 out of 10. Yeah, and especially as we age. Yeah,
I have that
really
on my Bernina home sewing machine, not on the cover lock, but yeah, that one is magic.
Yeah, so nice. So definitely look for those extra features if you're in the looking for an overlock machine. I mean, it's just those little things. Of course, it shouldn't be a deal breaker, but I love frictionless sewing, because that makes me more prone to sew, and so I do appreciate when brands do that little extra work of adding those features that limits the hassle of using our machines.
It feels like somebody have had issues with something, and some magical person came up with a solution.
Yeah, that's so nice. But we haven't talked about all the ways you can use the serger. I think we at least forgot one popular way that you could use it for, and you could definitely use it for knits too, which is the the rolled hem or the lettuce stitch, right, Malena?
Yeah, right. Yeah, we mentioned it a little bit last time, but I have actually never tried the letter stitch. I haven't tried it, but it is a really when there's something difficult, like doesn't look nice, make it even worse, and then it becomes a design feature.
Yeah. Exactly. So if you have problems with the fabric stretching out, embrace it, own it.
Exactly.
And make it even more stretchy. So if you're not familiar with the word lettuce, if you imagine a piece of lettuce and you know how wavy it can be at the upper edges, that's the way it is. So it's basically a seam, like a rolled hem that you would do on a sewing machine, for instance, when you're sewing with silk cut on the bias or things like that. It's a similar function, and because you're working with stretchy fabrics, it will stretch out, so it becomes like a wavy seam, basically.
Yeah,
but it's
really
very
wavy.
Really wavy, so it's so exaggerated, so it goes from being an annoyance to a design feature because it's
exactly.
Yeah, and you can also, by adjusting differential feed, you can actually increase. So if you feel it not wave enough, you can actually do it even worse or better, depending if what's your jam. And I think if you're not familiar with it, you can definitely just Google it. I have some photos of this technique as well. I will locate them and post them on our Instagram account.
Yeah, I posted on a previous post. Sanna from Paradise Pattern she had a honey girl tee, and she had made a reel about it, and had like 3 different ways of finishing both the necklines and the sleeve and bottom hem. So it was really nice when you can do so nice different endings to your garment. And I think there has to be a specific fabric for this seam to be actually working. If it has a lot of elastan, a lot of recovery, I don't think you are going to get such a nice result with this letter seam. It has to be something that is really stretchy, like a rib, and maybe 100% cotton, like it doesn't have that the elastan that pulls it together, or a pointelle knit or something that is like really stretchy and the recovery maybe is not so great. Then this seam is like the perfect one, because then it really can stretch out the fabric a lot and it doesn't pull it together, because you don't want that. So this seam is not suitable for every type of fabric. You have to have some type of rib or pointelle or interlock. Interlock,
right. Exactly. Because basically any type of very soft cotton knit that has a ribbing, I mean a very narrow ribbing, for instance the interlock, usually these fabrics look the same or similar on both sides. And you bring out a great point there, Malena, because the trait of those fabric is that when you hold a piece of it and stretch this out, it will not recover. Basically, it will bounce back. So those fabric are quite difficult to work with because they tend to grow. So they're difficult to add a neckline to because it tends to grow. And we have the same issues with the hemming. So that's why this letter stitch is so helpful. And it's not just as home sew is struggling with this. If those like pyjamas, it is soft like pontonelle fabric or soft cotton rib, the tops are usually hemmed the bottom with using this exact stitch. So it's not just something that we have to do as a cop out. It's actually standard procedure, standard method.
Yeah, because
for this type of
in the
fabric.
Garment industry, they have the same issues with this. They don't have a magical solution, so they embrace it and make it a design feature instead.
Yeah, and it can be pretty pretty, and it's also nice. It could be if you're doing like sleeves, you can get like what's the word here? Not trumpet sleeve, but petal sleeve, like where the sleeve is kind of like A-line and it hits the like A-line, so it's extended in the hem. And when you do that as well, you can get like a nice theater of it. So it's definitely something to consider as well. And I have another one, speaking of it, where I will take a photo of that one and also upload. I bought top in a second-hand store from the American brand Gap a while back, and they had just simply added a regular 3-thread overlock stitch at the end, a wide 3-thread overlock at the hem. That was all.
That was it?
It was a cotton ribbed t-shirt. Yeah, perfect. And I would say it's a medium. I mean, it's not. I was pretty surprised to see that, but it looks. I personally have no issues. That was kind of the appealing as a sewing nerd to see. All right, then, if Gap can do it, why can't we do it as well?
True.
And it works well. It doesn't roll up, and it lies flat, and it keeps the fabric together, and it's sewn in the same matching red thread as part of the striped garment. So yeah. Again, if it's good enough for them, why can't we do it as well?
So true. What kind of fabric was it?
It was a soft cotton,
like a single jersey or
single jersey. Oh yeah, but I wonder if it was more of an interlock.
Yeah,
it was a little bit sturdier.
That's the thing also, like right fabric, right combined with the right seam. Because if it is a single jersey, which most like regular knitted fabrics are, like t-shirt fabrics. Then if you just have an overlock, then it might start to roll. Maybe not the first wash, but after washing several times, it might start to roll. Like in the middle, in the side seam, that side seam might still like keep it straight, but in the middle it might start to roll. But if the fabric doesn't roll, if you have an interlock or a rib or something that doesn't naturally roll, then it's no problem to have the overlock seam. So it depends a little bit on what kind of fabric you have. So yeah, I mean, we mentioned this in the previous episode, that don't have this mindset that it always has to be this type of seam, like always have to be a twin needle seam if you want to hem a t-shirt. Like no, you can do, you kind of have to adapt depending on the fabric.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, and always do a sample, as we say.
Yes,
just try it out and figure and see if it works.
Absolutely.
So I think so now we have at least done. We have the one that you're doing, like the end fold, and we have the flat lock hemming that I talked about, which you also do a fold, and we have the blind hem, which is similar to the flat lock, and we have the letter stitch, and we also have just using the 3-thread overlock stitch to edge finish if the knit is more stable and doesn't roll. I'm sure there are other ways too, and we're really curious. If you have any more suggestions, please drop us a line either on our Instagram account or on you can also email us at stitchingtalespod@gmail.com, because it's I'm pretty sure there are some hidden gems out there that you can do as well. And we also have another suggestion, which you always do, Malena: add a cuff.
Yes.
Yeah. You can do that on your Serger as well.
Yeah, that might be
if all else fails,
easiest.
Add a cuff.
Yeah, add a cuff. That's the most easiest, especially with soft fabric. It's you can have wider cuffs as well then, so that's going to make it so much easier.
Yeah, I agree. We should also mention a little bit about the cover stitch machine. I will also say that you can go back and listen to an episode which is entirely dedicated to cover stitch machine. We will, of course, I will put that number in the show notes, but it's pretty easy. You can just search for cover stitch in our feed and you will find it. But yeah, the cover stitch machine, the benefit of using the cover stitch machine is the fact that you will get a great stretch because you have the looper thread on the reverse side. So a cover stitch machine, it sews you stitch either with one needle, that's called a chain stitch, and if it's a 2 needle, it's basically the cover stitch function. You can usually do a narrow and a wide, depending if your machine has 3 needle slots or 2, and then you can do a 3 needle version, which sews 3 needle on the right side, and on the reverse side you get a pretty intricate loop pattern, so you can actually flip it over, which is quite common amongst us home sewers. So instead of doing the needle on the right side or outside of the fabric, you do the needle on the inside, and then especially if you use a flossy thread such as woolen nylon, you get a really nice thick decorative seam.
And this is really, I think, also common with active wear and when you have lycra fabrics.
Exactly. So I'm going to hold up now for you watching the video version. here you can see I've done all these stitches with the reverse cover stitch. So on the right side I use this beautiful flossy thread, and then when you look on the inside you see the 3 needles, right? So it looks kind of reverse, which it is. So it's not supposed to be done like that, but I think it adds a really nice feature to your garments, especially if you're using some nice woolly nylon or flossy thick thread in the looper, because you can definitely do that, not the needles but only in the looper. So that's something I'm a very big fan of, and that's one of the benefits.
Professional look.
Yeah, it really looks. I mean, honestly, you wouldn't think that this is done on a home sewing machine, but it has mock flat locking and everything. So yeah, this was a really fun project, and I will post images of that too, so you can get some inspiration. And I also show this technique in my book, Master the Cover Stitch Machine, as well, if you're curious. And if you have problems with it, I highly recommend you check out my course, Cover Stitch Success. I will link to those both in the description section.
And don't feel discouraged if you are like having so many problems with your cover stitch machines. There is a reason why you, Johanna, have made this course. It's not like your machine has been working amazingly every time and no, you just decided to make this course. No, it happened for a reason. You have had all these struggles yourself.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, and just to give you reference, I mean, I think I have over 400 people that has taken this course, Cover Stitch Success, so
you're
it's
not
definitely
alone.
Not just me. No, because you're not listening. Everyone is listening. If you feel the pain, you're not alone. And I also have a free troubleshooting guide, which I will also link to for Cover Stitch Machine, and I think that has many thousands of downloads. So yeah, it's a common struggle. And to me, the benefit of using the Cover Stitch Machine is the fact that it looks very professional, because it also have, just like the Serger, it has a differential feed, which means that you can regulate the speed of the feed dogs. As we mentioned in the episode where we talked about sewing machine stitches, one problem that you might encounter is the fact that when you're sewing, the fabric might stretch out a little bit when you're working with knits, and by experimenting with the differential feed and of course the pressure foot pressure, which you can also do on a Cover Stitch Machine, you will be able to keep the fabric in check, which is why I love my Cover Stitch Machine. And as we mentioned, the problems are usually skip stitches. Those are the most common problems. And also Cover Stitch Machines domestic, they are not great for sewing over like very thick layers. I mean, they work best with just regular knits, I would say. But I also use my Cover Stitch Machine for sewing belt loops on jeans, and that has worked too. So it works nice with woven. So don't sleep on that one. It's a great machine, and I've used it for hemming jeans as well if it's not too thick. But I will say too many layers is not the favorite thing of a Cover Stitch Machine.
No, and you need to have different needles for when you're sewing jeans and when you are sewing hemming a knitted sweater.
Exactly.
Like there are universal or even ballpoint needles for the cover stitch as well, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't go up to the same large sizes. For instance, my Cover Stitch Machine has a maximum of 90, which I think is 14, I think. So there isn't any Cover Stitch special. That system isn't covered up to 100 or 110. So again, that's a limitation, which it definitely, and a tip as well, sometimes it's easier to, if you have problems with skip stitches, it might be good to switch to a larger needle, because that can really pierce through the fabric and allow the seams to form properly. So yeah, Cover Stitch Machine is definitely, I wouldn't say that you have to run out and buy one, because it's quite a pricey investment, and it's also a learning curve because it's a different way of sewing compared to a regular sewing machine. But if you do sew a lot of knits, which I do, I would not want to be without my Cover Stitch Machine. I mean, I rarely use the twin needle. I almost always use the Cover Stitch Machine when I'm hemming.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy as well that I actually bought one Cover Stitch Machine, because the hems are, I mean, it's the only way to get like a really professional looking two needle seam. You can't do that, unfortunately, with a regular home sewing machine. So I'm very happy with it. But how do you do the endings on when you end like a 2-needle flat lock? Do you? I usually
cover stitch.
Cover stitch. Yeah. I usually like overlap them, so the start of a seam is then covered basically. But how do you do with endings? Do you tie the threads together, or because this is like the good thing to know? The under thread, you can basically, if it comes out of its loop, you can basically just pull the thread and everything will unravel. So you have to do the endings in a certain way.
Exactly. It's interesting with the cover stitch machine because you can pull the looper thread from the, and that only pulls in one direction. I guess that's true for maybe sewing machine as well. So if you pull the looper thread at the start of the seam, then it's fixated. So you don't need to for instance, you cannot backstitch in a cover stitch machine, but if you're sewing on a regular sewing machine, you might want to backstitch before you start sewing. You don't need to do that with the cover stitch machine because the beginning of the seam is naturally secured. But as you say, Malena, when you reach the end, it needs to be secured, and there are several different methods of this. My favorite way, which is like the industrial way of doing it, and it works 9 times out of 10, is to use the pull method. And this I cannot describe, but I do have a video that I can post or link to in this. I have a tutorial on how to do that as well. But you basically lift the presser foot, pull out the 2 needle threads towards you using a sharp tool, and you cut them, and then you pull everything back, and that creates magically a tie. It pulls back the needle thread to the reverse side of the fabric, and then those 2 thread ties in with the looper thread, and it forms a knot. But you have to be careful. Sometimes it can be pulled a little bit too high, then you get those ridges. But that is almost always secure. But you can also, of course, secure it by pulling the needle threads using a hand sewing needle to the reverse side and tie everything to a knot as well, or just attach it. I find that really helpful as well. So how do you do it, Malena?
Something similar, not exactly like you do it. I think your way is better because I pull the upper threads, I pull them quite a lot apart and then pull everything out, cut it. I have to remove some because there becomes a loop then of some extra threads, and then I actually tie them into a knot just to be sure that they don't unravel. But whenever I do it, it's like, I'm not doing this in the best way. It can't be this complicated.
No, it's not. It's extremely simple, but you have to do it several times to get the knack of it, because it's a very specific pull that has to be done in a specific direction at a specific speed. So it's like once you get it, it's like the most easiest thing in the world. And one of the things that I loved about the one of the industrial cover stitch machine I tried is that maybe there is other cover stitch machine do this at home as well, but all you did was that you pushed the pedal in a certain manner when you were done, and then it pulled all the threads and tied it to a knot on the reverse side.
That's the magical thing with industrial machine, but because when you think of fast fashion, how it works, everything is the sewing line. They are just cranking out all the seams. They don't sit and do these kind of things. That's
with the
too
hand
slow.
Needle trying to secure.
No. It needs to be seconds. So I was like, this is not how they do it properly.
No, I can confirm. No, that's not how they do it, and it was a beautiful thing to experience. But I think there are some sewing machines, cover stitch machine, that has a similar function, if I'm not wrong, and I would be not surprised if it was Baby Lock, because they are the ones really in the forefront of product development.
And they have this function as well on industrial machine, just sews straight stitch as well. I mean, you don't sit and snip the threads. It's just with your pedal, you pull it the heel, you press with the heel, and then it clips it off automatically. So those kind of things are very, if you want to go fast, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, we are getting dreamy eyes now. If you're watching the video version, we're like,
that's how they do it.
Oh.
Professional industrials.
Yeah. We just need a technician, and then we're good to go, and plenty of space. So
yeah, space. Yeah, because
thing.
they are bigger.
Space
They have like a built-in table, basically. Like it's not just a machine; it's a table. It's everything. So you can't tuck that away in a shelf or anything. It's there when you have it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, those are they are good.
They are good. Yeah, very, very good. I hope that you found this episode useful. I think we managed to cover quite a few bits as well, and we will definitely talk more about this in the future, because as we know, this is a common issue that a lot of people have. How do you hem knit the best way? And hopefully you have gotten a few ideas if you listen to this episode and you go back and listen to episode 43. I think you will be pretty well equipped if you are ready to level up your hemming game for sure, and also go back and check out the separate cover stitch machine where we talk more in depth about this as well, and check out all the. It's going to be a link heavy episode show notes here, because we have a lot of tutorials that we can share to you. And of course, also remember to check out our Instagram account to see some images of all the seams that we are talking about in today's episode. All right then, thank you so much for listening. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena Hjerpe. Bye bye.
Bye bye.